Ninu Ilam, wait, welcome everyone. My name is Ted Cadwallader. I'm your co-host with Squeefle Tanat and Tsamkwatan for TRC 57 speaker series, Learning with Syeyutsus. Uh, this is a part of Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools' efforts to implement a Truth and Reconciliation goal and the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action 57. It's an exercise in partnership with our friends at the Vancouver Island Regional Library and our friends at the UBC Press. As always, following the protocol on this territory, we will turn it over to our friend Somkwatan to welcome all of our guests, seen and unseen, our ancestors and our relatives yet to come.
Hi, CM Shayef. Hi, I Nisqualawan Quanas Mok Lamnala. Hi, Zap, Quasielap, what Inamit to Tanaquel. Nestle Quanas Tiet to CM Schwaqua Jill, Tanaquel. Hi, Quasielap, what Inamit. Awa East, what Inamit to Sam. Our dear friend Sam will be here shortly. Tanaquel. Ní tap queets duch tanna olt eilish at swallop. Antha ta peat wheel to keep at swallop at tana quail eat duch the skies. Just really happy to see you all and raising my hands in the greatest respect to Jill and Sam. Sam, who is not here at the moment, is facing a little bit of technical difficulties, but will join us shortly. Raising my hands again to each and every one of you for joining us here today for our important work. I'm going to share a prayer and a song over the work. It's apka si emnesia, yeah. Tacha si nawach imistuch to ma stem. Uh, Heit at a heil I met tamach. Heitga at a house squale. Heitga kusnitsili. Heitga tana schwalakwa titlanameta tana quail. Heitga. Oh, 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 hey. Wah, wah, hey. Wah, wah, hey. Wah, wah, hey. Oh, oh, wah, hey. Wah, wah, hey. Wah, 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 hey. Wah, wah, hey. I got I squeal. I got I squeal. I got see. Patka Siem. Wa ha, ha, wa, hoi, ha, ha, hey. Wa, ha, wa, hoi, ha, ha, hey. Lights up, lights up.
Sim. As you noticed, Stephanie's is blanked out. Lawrence is on his iPhone, and Jill is with us. And Sam is joining us through Stephanie's speakerphone. So we are multitasking like you would not believe. So, but welcome everybody. We're very pleased to have you here. It's my pleasure to welcome our authors today. Sam George, a Squamish elder, survivor of the Canadian Indian residential school system, retired longshoreman, semi-retired drug and alcohol counselor. Sam works as an educator with the Indian Residential School Survivor Society, speaks with students and community groups about his experiences. Uh, and if you've read the book, you'll notice that he's also a bit of a Jimi Hendrix fan. Uh, Jill is a writer and instructor of creative writing and literature at Langara College in Vancouver, teaches Writing Live course in which students interview residential school survivors in order to collaborate with them to write their stories. So welcome to you both. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to, I heard your voice come through there, Syeyutsus. It's very nice to have you here. I'm going to turn the floor over to you and Jill because I know you've done this before. So, Minu Ilam.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. So, Haichka, thank you so much for having us with you today. I think both Sam and I are grateful to be here. And Sam, are you there? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I think what we'll do here is I'll be asking Sam some questions and I'll basically let him take the lead as far as what direction we take here, but I'll start us off with a few questions, if that's all right. So you just, thank you so much for that introduction, Ted. You just used Sam's traditional name, which is actually my first question. I was going to ask Sam, if you would like to share with us your traditional name and a little bit about how it was given to you and who gave it to you.
Okay, my grandmother, I think this is what I was told, because when I was a baby, she was introduced to her and she held me and she said, "Your name is Syeyutsus," and that was my grandfather, my dad's dad. And I didn't take the name, although I knew it was mine, I didn't take it till I was in my mid-40s. And and that's where it stands. It's I'm 79 now, so I always knew that was my name, and the elders called me that, and I officially took it about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think, and that's how it stands.
Hmm. And it's a family name, isn't it?
Yes, passed down.
Yeah. You mentioned that it was your grandmother, your Ta, who gave you that name. And so, and I know how important she was to you. I wonder, will you tell us a little bit about your Ta and what she meant to you during your childhood?
Yes, my Ta is the name for our grandma, and my dad and my mom broke up. My mom moved away, and my child more or less took care of us. She cooked for us, did everything, washed our clothes and made sure we ate. And send us to school. You know, I remember brushing down my hair. I guess a lot of elders in them days did this, but she spit on her hand and brushed my hair down. It wasn't unusual, you know, like it was just the way it was. And she really tried to raise us the best she could. She couldn't speak English very good because she spoke a lot of the Squamish Nation language. And her English was very broken up, same as my papa, her husband, and all the elders around her age. And I hope that explains some of it.
Will you tell us a little about, you've talked to me and it's in the book about your ta teaching you and your siblings about gathering plants and medicines?
Yes, she'd say, I'm going for a walk. And we were probably about 9, 10, maybe if that age, 11. And we'd go with her and we'd walk along the trails. There was a lot of trails in the days, they're all gone now. But we'd walk along there and she'd say, oh, that's good medicine, go pick me some. So we'd run and pick it. And sometimes she would say, taste it, tell me how it tastes. And we'd eat it and we'd tell her how it tasted. And she would tell it, okay, it's ready. Of course, she would take a taste too, but she wanted us to know. And then we'd go to pick whatever she wanted. We'd go for a walk. And she always had a basket she made out of cedar. And she'd put it all in her back and put it in there. And we'd go to her house and she would get out a pot and start to maybe put water in it and then start mixing the plants and talking to us all while she was doing it. And she mixed up her English with the Squamish Nation language when she talked to us. And and we helped her, you know, we'd take the leaves off or whatever, and she wanted the leaves or she wanted the stalk of the plant and she would mix it up or pound the stalk up and mix it with other plants. And this is how she made the medicines. And I hope I could remember sometimes when I do, I'm walking and I see plants and I'll pick some and I'll chew it and it'll bring me back memories of her.
Mm. Beautiful. So in that way, would you say that tradition was an important part of your childhood?
Yes, as far as my grandmother was concerned and my grandpa and my dad also.
Yeah.
They tried to, you know, they just lived the way they knew how.
Both of your parents, like you, both of your parents attended St. Paul's residential school, which is so close. It's, a 10-minute walk from where you grew up and even where you live now. But you've told me about how your parents never told you anything about St. Paul's when you were a child. They never spoke about it. Why do you think they never said anything about it?
Well, I think, you know, there was a lot of abuse too. My dad was very hard of hearing, and he told us one time it was from the nuns hitting him on the head, and which was their favorite. We all got hit on the head a lot. I also had trouble with my right ear. My left ear rings constantly. And I have trouble hearing. A lot of times I think when you're like that, you learn to lip read. Like when people talk to you, you watch their face. And, you know, and I hope that answers your question.
So yeah, I know you've said that your parents, they didn't bring their memories into your household when you were a child, and it sounds like it had to do with that, what they suffered. They didn't want to you didn't necessarily want to share it, so almost as if then you were caught unprepared when you were taken to the school. What do you remember about your first day being taken to St. Paul's School?
Well, I remember it pretty good because they brought us up there. My dad walked us up, and we went into this room, and there was the principal of the school, Madam Kyla. She ran the school. She told us to take all our clothes off. We took them off, and she gave us not new clothes. You could tell it was hand-me-downs. And my brother and I, we noticed we both were wearing the same kind of clothes. Socks and boots, and of course underclothing and jeans and a shirt. And that's how we dressed. And they were all the same as all the other boys. And the girls were dressed the same too. And that's what I remember.
And do you remember on that day they assigned you a number as well? Do you remember that?
Yes, they did. I think my brother was in the 20s, like 27 or something like that. Because he was older, we had different numbers, and I was number 3. For all the years I went there, a lot of times he would say, number 3, do this, do that, come here. I didn't have and my name was rarely called Sam, or if they called me, it was Samuel.
And is there anything else that you remember from that first day about the nuns and your first impression of them?
I just remember getting our clothes changed and being brought down the stairs, and all the boys were downstairs playing because it was raining out in the classroom, a big, huge classroom. And that's about, I remember my brother and I just went and sat on the desk and looked at everybody. And a lot of them were our cousins and boys we knew from that we played with. And they just looked at us and said, hi, hi, and kept on playing or doing whatever they were doing. And that's what I remember on my first day.
Yeah.
Very isolated.
There's a story you've told about being in the classroom, one of your first days at St. Paul's School, about the 2 Musqueam brothers and how they were speaking their language. Do you remember that story? Can you share it with us?
Yes, one was my age and he was grade 1. And his older brother was grade 2. And there was probably about 3 or 4 rows, long rows, maybe about 30, 40 feet of grade 1s. And all the desks were joined, very heavy. And then there was grade 2s and 3s. And the older brother was in grade 2, and the younger brother, like I said, was my age. And they sat sort of close to each other, and they started speaking their language. I think the older brother was just instructing them what to do. At least that's what I gathered. But they were from another reserve, and I didn't understand their language. But they were speaking their language, and they were leaning over. And the nun, I was sitting there listening, and the nun was standing right behind me. And she walked all the way down the end of the row and walked up behind them. They didn't see her, and they were talking like we're talking. And she had a ruler, and she started hitting them both on the head. And she hit one boy so hard, her ruler went flying. So she grabbed them and started punching them, grabbed them both by the back of their collars, dragged them up front of the class, and she made them kneel down and hit them some more. And then she looked at us all sitting there, and we're all traumatized. And she said, these boys are speaking their language. You are never to do that here anymore. And then, like, got us scared. And although a lot of them continued to speak the language, but they always looked around for the nun first, or they were somewhere where the nun would be, like at the end of the field or something. And they kept it alive that way. And that's what I remember.
Yeah. Something you've talked to me about when it comes to St. Paul's School is how you had three of your siblings were there, your brother and two sisters, and how each one of you, of course, experienced some difficult things. But something that you've told me about is that you would try to help each other out. You would try to, in your words, you've said to take the beating off each other. So do you have can you remember a time when, for example, you tried to help out, let's say your sister Honeybee or any of your other siblings, or maybe when your siblings tried to help you out?
Yes, a few times when the nuns were slapping me around, my brother went over and he started punching the nuns or pushing them and saying, leave them alone. And of course, the nun turned around and joined by other nuns that, like in the classroom or wherever, and they started beating on him. So his way of making them stop picking on me was to take the punishment for me. And that happened quite a few times. And my older brother was always my protector. No matter what happened, he was always there watching over me. He was my big brother and I was his little brother.
And I think you filled that role for your little sister, didn't you? A few times you took the same role for her.
Yes, I did. I remember the nuns I heard her cry. I knew her crying. And I looked over and the nuns were pulling her hair and slapping her wrist. They were slapping her hands because she was left-handed and she was writing left-handed and they wanted her to be right-handed. And that was, a simple thing like that. They started beating on her, pulling her hair and slapping her hands with a ruler. They always had a ruler and they wanted her to write right-handed. And I went running over there and said, leave her alone, leave her alone. Like I didn't know all this. None of us were in there, knew the kind of abuse that could be put on. And of course, the nuns turned their abuse to me, but they left my sister alone. And that's what I remember, part of it.
Yeah. Today, are you and your siblings close? How did the residential school affect your ability to have relationships with your siblings?
Well, we all love each other, but we don't have that bonding. I know they're my brothers and sisters, but we don't have that bonding. I noticed bonding in other people, eh? I see them and they have that bonding, and we don't have it. And I imagine everybody who went to residential school for quite a few years, right away we were separated. I was put in little boys dormitory. My brother was put in the intermediate boys dormitory. Same with my sisters. They were put in, my younger sister in little girls dormitory and my older sister in the big girls dormitory. We were all separated and we were kept that way.
How many years? Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
Um, I was going to ask how many years you were at St. Paul's for?
I was there 8 years.
8 years. Yeah. Are there any other memories from your time there that you'd like to share today?
Or am I what? I'm sorry.
Any other memories from your time there that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, it wasn't a happy time. we weren't allowed to speak our language, but we prayed in Latin, we sang in Latin, and so I could speak Latin pretty good when I left there. And a lot of the things that we did were outlawed. If we brought food from home, like our grandmas and my dad would fry bread. There's nothing like a nice piece of fried bread with butter on it. And we had to sneak it in, and we couldn't let the nuns see us eating it. So a lot of the things we did, we had to hide to do it. And where do I hide my bread? I put it in my bed. Then I'd put it in my pocket. Or if I had a jacket, I would put it in my jacket. And sometimes, like we had passed down jackets, there was rips in them. And it was ripped on purpose so they could put stuff inside, pack stuff around that they weren't supposed to have. And that's what I remember.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Do you remember, and can you tell us about your last day at St. Paul's School when you were 15?
Yeah, my last day there, although we knew they were ripping it down, the nuns were making all the boys and the girls. I remember I was scrubbing the floor and the boys were washing the walls and the windows. And I was on my hands and knees. I just had a scrub brush, a bucket, and a cloth. I'd scrub the floor, squeeze the cloth, and wipe the water. And I was doing this on my last day. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? They're ripping it down. They're going to tear it down, but we scrub on our 8 of us because it was a big classroom, 8 of us on our hands and knees scrubbing the floor. And I just got up and I said, I'm not doing this. I threw the brush down and the rag and I kicked the bucket over. And I went upstairs and I grabbed a pillowcase and I threw my meager belongings, maybe an extra pair of pants, a shirt and underclothing, socks and runners. I threw them in a pillowcase and I started walking. I threw it down the fire escape and climbed down and I was walking out and Mother Michaela was saying, "You get back here." And I just looked at her and said, "F you," and kept on walking. And I left. That was my last day there.
And after that, you were free from St. Paul's School, but you were 15 and you were basically at home with just your brother. What was that like? What were those days like in the aftermath of St. Paul's with you and your brother at home?
Well, we had a lot of freedom. We had a lot of, um, you know, like my dad was hardly ever home. And, we could come in, I could stay out with other kids 2, 3 in the morning. We just walk around, probably 14 or 16 of us. And we'd go to the grocery store the bakery. And if we went in there, we'd just steal food, like bread or something and whatever they had, whatever we could grab, buns or something. And we'd go sit in the bush and eat it. And that's basically how it was. My dad, he loved us, but he loved to drink too.
So would you say it was a time you were very free, but was it also a feeling of being a little bit alone after the experience of St. Paul's?
Yeah, it was, like I wasn't used to all that freedom.
Mhm.
And You know, my dad, he drank a lot, and I started stealing his booze. And I got drunk, and my brother got drunk, and I assaulted him, and I went to jail. And I did 4.5 years in jail in a place called Ocala Prison. I probably did about 4 months there, 5 months. Then I went to a place called Haney Correctional. Of course, out in Maple Ridge, it was called Haney in them days. And the thing about that, I liked it there. The food was good, and we had clean clothes. We had 2 sets of work clothes and 2 sets of dress clothes. We had work boots and we had dress shoes. Well, we called them dress shoes, but they were just, can't remember what they were. We had a nickname for them. I can't remember. But that's how it was. I ended up doing 4.5 years there, in and out.
One thing you said to me, and that's in your book that I think is very striking, is that you said that being at Haney especially was way better than being at St. Paul's. And could you tell us why that was?
Well, it was better than St. Paul's because the guards there, they just guarded us. You know, they made sure we didn't hurt each other. Of course, they charged us if we were fighting or doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. But they left us alone pretty basically, just made sure we behaved. And in jail, you know, you got to protect yourself more from the other inmates. And but I liked it there because it was cleaner. I had my own clothes, had my work clothes, and I had my dress clothes, had my work boots, my dress boots, and the food was a lot better.
Mm.
You know, the inmates, they were taking training, chef training, but they cooked for like, I can't remember, what was it, 300 or 400 inmates there? And they cooked for all of us, and the food was pretty good compared to St. Paul's. You know, it was a normal meal. You know, we either got pancakes for breakfast and um, eggs, toast, syrup, you know, stuff that was normal. And me being 15, being 8 years in residential school and being in Ocala, it was a lot better. And I was already institutionalized, so it was good in my mind.
Once you left, so you finished your sentence out at Haney, and then you left. And what was life like for you after you left Haney?
Well, I followed my dad and my brothers and my uncles. They were all longshoring, you know, and I ended up going down there and working being a longshoreman. You know, the money was always good and the work was hard. When you first started, you got the jobs nobody wanted, so you got them. You either take it or leave it. And you know, the pay was pretty good, so a lot of times we take extra clothing because we didn't know what we were going to get. And the worst job down there, in my mind, was cowhides, raw cowhides. You know, when you picked it up, there was still blood on them and maggots. But they gave us a clear plastic and we tied it around the front of us and plastic gloves. But still, you know, it wasn't very good working on them. That was just part of it. And we got a lot of the heavy sacks, 140, 190 pound sacks, 140 pound malt sacks and 190 pound sacks of coffee. And that was the kind of jobs we got. But you know, you stuck it out, you did it. It was called paying your dues because everybody did it.
And then socially, what kinds of things were going on for you?
Socially,
Yeah, what else were you up to?
hung around the dispatch hall a lot. And when we didn't make a job, we'd walk down about 4 blocks down to the courthouse where they also had the where guys were going to court, and we'd sit in there. And sometimes a lot of our relatives would, if you got picked up for drunk or something, they'd march you all in. And they'd all stand there and they'd call your name and you get your $5 fine or $10 fine. Or if maybe it's about your second or third time, you get 5 days in jail and you go to Ocala for 5 days. And but a lot of the times, we just sit around the hall, a dispatch hall, play cards, played a lot of cards there, and then go home, wait. They had a dispatch at 7 o'clock. They had one at noon. Then they had one at 3 dispatch. And sometimes if you sat around the hall, the buzzer would ring and whoever was lined set up would get the job, get a replacement or something. But that was our life. It wasn't by myself. There was quite a few of us.
And then around that same time, you married and you had your 2 sons. Can you tell us a little bit about that, your family life at that time?
Yeah, my family life, I had a really nice wife. Trouble is she took care of me. And that's the way it was. I was so used to people taking care of me. Residential school, jail. And that's what she mentioned one time, my wife. She said, I feel like all I do is take care of you. And I went to work and everything, gave her my paycheck. And that was part of it because I'd keep maybe $10 to go to work or maybe $20, $10 to drink. And because at noon at work, every noon, not everybody, a lot of guys rushed up to the nearest bar, and we'd all throw $1 in the middle, and the waiter would bring us our beer. But my life as a husband wasn't very good because I didn't really, I just gave her my money, but I tried to carry on like I was still single. And I had 2 boys. They're beautiful men right now. And they were probably beautiful boys, but I never really knew them because I left them. Every now and then I'd take them out on a weekend and we go to a movie or something. And a lot of weekends I disappointed them because I never showed up when I told them I'd be there to pick them up. And I always had something more important to do. In my mind, it was more important, like drinking and drugging. And
So you managed to keep the longshoring job for 43 years. But at that time, in those earlier days, you struggled, as you said, with some drinking and with drugs. How did you finally give that up? What helped you?
well, just, I went to the doctor and my liver was going, my kidneys, my prostate. And my doctor, she said, if you keep it up, Sam, I'm not going to be able to help you. He said, you'll be dead within a year. And being the alcoholic, I looked at him, I said, doctor, I can do it in 6 months. And he just shook his head and said, that's all I can do, Sam. I got up and left and I went out and I tried, I drank more and I drank lots and I think, heck, I'm dying anyway. But then one time I was married and I walked in, I came home about 6 or 7 in the morning my wife was sleeping or pretending to be asleep. And I looked at her sleeping. And I was stoned on the drug, my drug of choice. And I thought I'm going to kill her. And I walked into the kitchen. I opened up the drawer and there was a big butcher knife there. And I reached for it and I stopped. I guess a little bit of goodness I had in me. And I closed the dresser drawer, that where the knives were. And I went and I sat outside. And this was on Easter Sunday, I think. And I was just sitting outside. It was a nice warm day. And I sat there and my wife came out and she said, "What are you doing?" And I told her what I was going to do. And she said, "I would have forgave you." And I said, "No." And I told her I was going to kill you. And I told her, I said, "I want help. I want to quit." And she said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." And she got up, went and made a phone call. And two counselors came and got me. And they too asked me, "Do you really want to quit, Sam?" I said, "Yes, I do." And they brought me over to detox in Vancouver. And I spent 6 days in detox, going through, and it was good there because my body was detoxing and I suffered a lot. And I remember everybody, a lot of guys, people, or men and women were lining up and they were getting pills. They opened up their mouth and they got a pill popped in their mouth. And I noticed after a while, they seemed to be really mellow. And so the next time they got in line, I went and got in line too. But they wouldn't give me one. They said it had to be, what do you call it? Given, doctor had to say they needed it. And so I just sat there and detoxed without any pills or anything. And, I wish I would say it got better in 5 days, but it didn't. Because after the 5th day, they sent me to a recovery house in Creston, BC, put me on a bus. It was, I think it, excuse me, it was a long bus ride. And the bus kept on going to all these little towns, dropping off packages, go to another town, drop off more packages, pick up passengers. And I can't remember how many hours it took me to get to Creston. Excuse me, burping. But anyway, I got to Creston and they were waiting for me. They picked me up and drove me to a recovery house. And I stayed there, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. And they brought me to meetings and they had meetings in the recovery house. And a lot of times I met this guy and I didn't know he was a trapper. And trappers do a lot of walking. And he just asked me who I was and said, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And like trappers, I used to walk and we walked into town. It was about 3 or 4 miles away. I remember walking down, he's walking there and I'm behind him. And I'm complaining. He just kept walking. And we got into town and had a coffee and a pie and got up and walked back to the treatment center because we had a lot of spare time in there. And next morning he did the same thing and I got up and about a week later, 2 weeks later, I say, "Hey, Joseph, want to go for a walk?" He said, "Yeah, okay." We got up and we walked into town. Or we walked the other way, which was nothing there, just a long stretch of highway. And we walked that way. We got so far and turned around and walked back. And I got in pretty good shape that way. And that was basically how my 5 weeks in recovery home was. And they put me on the bus again and I drove down, got to Vancouver and stayed home for a couple of days and then went to South Laleham Treatment Center over Vancouver Island. And I spent 6 weeks there, I think. But I got a very good counselor and she just dug me and dug me. made it hurt that I had to dig up myself. And I found out why I drank a lot and drugged a lot. It was basically because I was pushing down all my hurts and pains down. They were there, and she made me bring them up. It made me find out who I was. And, I always thank Louise for that. Her name was Louise. Oh, and I don't think she'd mind me using her name. And I straightened out. And I wasn't scared to look at myself when I wasn't feeling good or I was angry. I could stop and say, what's wrong? Why are you like this? And I knew if I kept it up, I would go back out drinking. So I was made to look at my problems and find the answer and to try to take care of it. And that was basically how, after 33 years, I stayed drug and alcohol free.
One thing you've said, Sam, is that at that time, your culture is the thing that saved you. And maybe that's a good question for us to start to come to a close with. But just if you could say a few words about how your culture saved and continues to save you.
Oh, yeah. I picked up I always had a drum. And I picked up my drum and I went back to our longhouse. And I tried to get involved in that. And I did. And I adopted another culture, sweat lodge. It's a white man's version of a sauna, but it's a lot hotter in there. But you go in there, I adopted the sweat lodge, and you go in there, and it's very hot in there because they bring in a lot of hot rocks that they made bright red from being heated, put it in the middle, close the door, and you're sitting in the dark, and they throw water on them grandfathers. And you sweat a lot, and all during that sweat. And one of the men sitting beside me, he said, "Are you in pain?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Pray harder then." That's what I did. I prayed and prayed, and I prayed for myself mostly. Please, God, help me, help me. That was how my prayers began. And then after a while, you got, when you started helping you go in there, and then I started praying for my brothers and my sisters and all my relatives and all the friends I knew who were still drinking and drugging. I started praying for them. And then I prayed for myself at the end. And that was part of the culture. Then I went to a Sundance. I joined a Sundance. And that's what it's called. You get up, you pray when the sun comes up, you go out and you dance and you do that 4 times a day. You do it, you take a break, yeah, and you don't eat, you fast. You drink water, but you can't drink it while you're dancing. And you're not even supposed to drink water. But I was a new one, and my health wasn't that great, so they allowed me to have zips of water. And I did that for 4 days. But you were there actually for 10. We went there for 10. We actually went to South Dakota. My uncle drove me down to South Dakota. Or we drove down to South Dakota. It was almost like a 2-day drive. And stayed there for 10 days and came back. And that's what I adopted. And I believe in it because I feel really close to the Creator when I do that. And that's basically, what I do. I still go to my longhouse and practice that. And I also go to Sundance and go to sweat lodges, which they have one or 2 a week, maybe even 3. But I don't do it as much anymore. I don't know, maybe because of my age and my health. But that's where that is.
I'm just going to check in. How are we for time? Should we?
I think that's a great spot.
Great
Jill.
spot.
Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right. So we'll wrap it up there. Okay. Sam, thank you. I guess we'll turn it back over to you. Yeah, Ted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, Syeyutsus. It's a wonderful book that you've written. When I was reading it, I was thinking about the courage to tell that story, the harsh realities and the things that you went through, but also the warmth that you speak about your ta'a and your papa and your family when you were young, and also how you reconnected with the culture and went through that healing journey to get to the spot that you're at. And I love the final chapter. I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here even after all of that. So just want to raise my hands to you too, Jill, and to Syeyutsus, for sharing this story. It's called The Fire Still Burns, Life in and After Residential School. For our audience today, if you want to take advantage of the UBC Press 20% off, you can go do that at the TRC 57 Speaker Series website. Want to acknowledge our relative Sampwatan, who started us off creating this safe space for Jill and Syeyutsus to share this story. Jill, thank you for being a great interviewer, and Syeyutsus for being a great storyteller. I hope all of you can join us next time. So, Itzapka for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.